Steve Smith, welcome to Backroads Basketball Podcast.
Blake, pleasure is all mine. It's great to be with you, and I can't tell you how excited I am about this evening.
Well, there's so many podcasts out there. I'm sure in time this will rise above them all. You've got your burnt orange on. Ironically, I've got my maroon on, but make no mistake where things are headed.
We're Longhorns for life.
But we don't want to alienate anyone. We love everybody, right? Big 12, SEC. We'll go to Lubbock and throw tortillas. We'll go to the Dixie Chicken in College Station. George's in Waco. We're okay with that.
Absolutely. Let's not forget about the feisty Nightbirds of Rice in the old Southwest Conference.
No doubt.
Playing behind or in front of the curtain, depending on where you were standing.
Yep. Well, let's get going with this. What we're going to do is talk about everybody that's made this deal possible. And let's start, of course, with you, Clear Fork Financial. By the way, current coach, me, retired coach, you, and now you're doing the financial planning stuff through Clear Fork Financial, an affiliate, of course, of Backroads Basketball, a sponsor. So it's just great to have partners in this because we can't get this done otherwise.
Well, when we started talking about this, and I mean, I spent 30 years in education, and 24 of those years were teaching and coaching, 12 as an assistant, 12 as a head coach, and then finally 6 years in administration. And at some point, maybe this evening, we'll get into why I stepped away and why I decided to retire. But Clear Fork Financial, as you know, is led by my point guard from the 86 state runner-up Mansfield Tigers, Mike
There's
Ryan.
always a basketball connection.
Always a basketball. And Mike and I have been best friends since 82. So for 42 years, we've been thick as thieves, ride or die. Literally the type of friendship that I would step in front of a bullet for him and vice versa. And we've been in some situations, fortunately, that didn't involve bullets when we were growing up, but we've been there. Mike he has an incredible presence when he's working with his clients. I've had an opportunity now in the short period of time we've worked together to sit in on about 10 meetings. And his ability to figure out exactly what the client needs and what's in their best interest. I mean, as a fiduciary, he takes his responsibility incredibly serious. But in addition to that, he's an attorney. So when you talk about estate planning and the umbrella,
asset.
I mean, he covers every single base: financial planning, growth strategies, tax strategies, giving, legacy benefits.
It's just the entire package, the entire
It's
financial
everything.
package.
It's everything. I mean, and I've seen him. He's helped my parents right before my dad passed. My dad was a very successful banker. My dad was a tough man who he didn't trust a lot of people, but if he did trust you and you were part of his group, you were in. And I think that's probably true of a lot of men of his generation. Well, he trusted Mike. And we sat down with Dad in the last couple of months that he was with us, and he allowed Mike to help him. And what a blessing it was for my mom and for my sister and I, for Mike to be able to do that for Dad. I've seen him help fellow educators. We work with one of the assistant principals I used to work with at Martin High School, her mother, and we've had an opportunity to help her. Of course, we check in, as basketball coaches, we're hyper communicators. And you and I
Right.
are probably at the top of that list. I mean, I don't know that a day goes by that we don't communicate in some form or fashion. And so to bring that skill set to this, to the financial sector and help Mike has been great. Um, so yeah, I mean, Clear Fork, we do it all. And the truth is, if there's something we can't do, we know somebody who can. So essentially,
Absolutely.
everything is in house. Mike's a basketball guy. You mentioned that. I mentioned that. But, Mike played at Odessa Junior College for 2 years after high school. Um, and one of those years, he got a chance to play with Larry Johnson,
Mm.
old grandmama from Skyline, Texas, Skyline High
Played for
School in Dallas,
Dennis
Texas.
Helms.
Yeah, played for Dennis Helms. His first year, he
Dennis,
played with our high school teammate Riley Smith, who was first team All State. You and I senior year.
Coach Helms, who I've coached against, he used to say all the time, I could have the best recruiting class in the country just bringing up the name Larry Johnson. So there you go. Mike, you're part of one of the greatest JUCO recruiting classes in the country.
Yeah,
And you're a hell of a financial guy.
well, he's been doing it for 23 years. Before that, he was an attorney for a firm in Dallas, a real estate attorney called Vincent and Elkins, a big firm. And he just decided, you know what, life is too short. Um, I'm going to bet on myself, and I'm going to go to work for myself. And it allowed him time to coach his son's basketball teams, his son's baseball teams, his daughter's softball teams, and he was able to do all that and still provide for his family. And I don't think he has any regrets about the business he went into. Having seen him in action now, and you and I know, we know when somebody's selling you, a bill of goods and when they're legit. When I've seen Mike sit down with clients, it's magical. I told him, I said, Mike, you have an amazing ability to be patient with people, to meet them where they're at, and to help them. And he has, like, I mean, I can give you example after example, but there's a couple of sisters that we're working with at Granbury, Texas, one of the places that I used to coach, place that you're very fond of. And these sisters have seen amazing results in the 7 years that they've been with Mike. So I'm thrilled to be with Clear Fork. We're thrilled to be partnering with Backroads Basketball. I know you're going to get into San Antonio, but I was eager to jump on THSCA and get going with that. But next summer, hopefully, we'll be at both and maybe TGSCA, the Texas Girls Coaches Association deal in Arlington. And, it'll just be a summer full of Backroads, Clear Fork, and quality hardwood floors. And man, it's exciting, Blake. I'm glad to be here.
Well, I'm thrilled. That's a great way to frame all the stuff that Clear Fork can do. Um, and that's where I want to take this next is what the heck is Backroads basketball? People that are watching this maybe for the first time, they may not understand. That's my vision. That's my start to my love affair with these old gyms and just the game of basketball from a historical perspective. So I've got a website that I maintain. I need to do a better job of adding to it. But Backroads Basketball is my vision to help bring the history of Texas basketball to the forefront where it should be. I think I said this to you the other day. Close your eyes and imagine the entire game of basketball without the state of Texas, and you would create a giant void in the game. You would create a giant void. I think we have 6, maybe 7 people with deep ties to the state of Texas in the Basketball Hall of Fame, and many more that will be in the Hall of Fame. So we've got a lot of history. So what Clear Fork helped me with Backroads Basketball is take this version of the podcast that you and I are doing now down to the clinic to the Texas Association of Basketball Coaches clinic in San Antonio. So this is basically a post recording of that. And we're introducing to everybody what we did down in San Antonio. Obviously, we had a giant help from you guys at Clear Fork, but we also had tremendous help from my good friend Steve Balthrop, who I used to coach with. He coached with me at Cedar Park High School, where I still am today. So he's a former coach, but he's running an apparel business along with his wife. So he knows how to deliver this stuff to us as coaches and people that run programs. Because, you know, we want our stuff yesterday.
Right.
You know, and they're really, really good. So they've provided a lot of things, not only to my program over the years, but to Backroads basketball. So we're so appreciative of that. And then last and certainly not least, we'll see Steve from Ovation, and then Peter Contreras, one of my great friends that works for QHF Sports, formerly Quality Hardwood Floors of San Marcos. Those guys, holy cow! If you need a floor done, that's where you've got to go. They're the
They did
best.
the last time I had a head coaching job before I got out of coaching and went into administration, Blake, they did our court.
Yep,
And by the way, it's still there 10 years later. They haven't changed it. Why change something? It's perfect.
it's
It's kind
perfect.
of like the Texas football uniforms. Why change them?
Perfect. And they just did the Final Four floor. And this will be another podcast, I'm sure, that we'll have, but they did the floor out in Eola, Texas. The 1932 pecan wood floor that they refurbished. This thing is unbelievable. And that was an epic clinic that we put on, again, inspired by my love of old gyms and wanting to bring a different kind of experience to people that love and coach basketball. So here we are, Backroads Basketball, three of the greatest sponsors I can come up with, you know, Quality Hardwood Floors, QHF Sports, Ovation Sports, and of course, Clear Fork Financial, right there in the heart of Fort Worth, Texas, another one of my favorite places in the world. And of course, you just had to go and put your office on Camp Bowie Boulevard, didn't you? Just had to do it.
We couldn't be happier with our location. Um, Blake, and I can't wait for you to get up and visit now that the remodel's done. There are some iconic places along the historic bricks of Camp Bowie. Um,
Definitely.
we're within a long putt of Kincaid's Hamburgers, the original Kincaid's grocery
Love it.
store. And then, of course, Showdown's been there for 54 years, a great little saloon right down the way from us. And um, it's spectacular. For us, it's perfect. This is not a big space. It's very intimate. Um, but when we meet with a client, they get our undivided attention. So this will be a perfect space for us to meet with a couple or an individual or a family and give them the one-on-one attention they deserve. And you know, going back to talking about San Antonio, so when Blake and I had this idea and we were able to partner, I was like a kid in a candy store, and Blake can attest to this. And it's one of my greatest memories um, to be able to go back after not coaching for 7 years almost, being in administration, and see so many familiar faces,
Mhm.
and to be able to shake hands and give hugs and be back. I felt like I was back in the game. And as much as Blake and I talk about basketball, um, that's something I needed and I craved. And I appreciate the opportunity, Blake. I hope this is a relationship with Clear Fork and Backroads that lasts for a long, long time.
Well, since you started with those guys and you've shared that journey with me, and then I hear you talk, you talk a little financial advice, much like, we continue to talk about X's and O's. I've learned a lot just from that. Y'all got a great operation. And we did have a terrific time in San Antonio. Some of the podcasts that we will publish after this one goes out, we were lucky enough to sit down with, fortunately, some of my good friends, but they also happen to be, obviously, in my opinion, but that of others as well, just some Texas basketball legends. Mike Wacker, Stanley Bonowitz, the list goes on and on. We had some impromptu guests too that are phenomenal. You and I both know Marty Gross, who used to coach a long time at Rice and here in the state of Texas. He just wrote a book, so we got to sit down with him. Of course, the head of the Texas Girls Coaches Association, Sam Tipton, the Groover Greyhound legend that he is. So we had a lot of terrific conversations, and a lot of it, as I told each one of them, of course, directed towards my respect for them and what they've done, not only as a player but as a coach, and really honor what they've contributed to basketball here in the state of Texas. So it's going to be fun for everybody to watch. And then, so I'm just anxious for people to be able to see those.
Well, and here's the thing. If you haven't watched Blake Brown conduct an interview, you're in for a treat. He has a unique ability to listen and to really get out of the people that he's talking to get to their heart, to get to the core of whatever it is you're discussing. So when you watch Backroads, you're going to see, some phenomenal basketball, like Blake said, legends in the game, including a young legend in the game. And you and I both hope that he's going to be on one of the Mount Rushmores of Texas basketball lore, and that's Rodney Terry. Rodney Terry sat down with Blake. I mean, but when you watch, you'll understand what I'm talking about. Blake Brown can bring out the best in everybody that sits down with him. And this is where this is going. I mean, we're going to do this for a long time. We've talked about having fun with it. A lot of you, especially you younger guys, are probably like, well, who's this guy from Clear Fork that says he taught and coached for 24 years and he was administrator for 6? Okay. I'm going to tell you who I am. I'm a guy that grew up in Maryland in Cole Fieldhouse, going to University of Maryland basketball games, watching Lefty Driesell, going to his camps, Albert King, Buck Williams, Larry Donaldson. I mean, the whole night. Oh gosh, Boston Celtics. Come on, Blake.
Len Bias.
Len Bias, Ernie Graham. I mean, I grew up watching Maryland basketball before we moved to Texas. Not everybody can be born in Texas, but I got here as soon as I could. And
thank you for that.
And then in '82, when I walked into the gym at Mansfield High School and witnessed what was going on, what Rodney Shropshire was doing with those guys, I wanted to be a part of it. All I did from sun up to sundown was shoot. That's it. My goal was on a slope in the back driveway, and I shot and I shot and I shot, and I can still shoot and I can still shoot and I can still make a lot. Being a part of Mansfield's basketball program and playing in the state championship game, we didn't win. You were down there the same time I was down there with your Demet bunch, right?
Oh yeah, 1986.
86. And that kind of laid the foundation for my love of the game. I mean, it was already there. I grew up with a basketball in my hand. My dad loved basketball. My dad played at Suitland High School in Maryland, and he wasn't a great basketball player. He would tell you he was better than me, which is not true. But my dad was a solid basketball player. But he was a great basketball dad. He was very supportive of my basketball career, if you will. Had a chance to go play for one of your great friends and mentors up at Midwestern State. Had a chance to go play at McMurray, but my dad said, no, you need to go to the University of Texas. And that's what I did. And Bob Weltlich, God bless him, he ended my career. Um, and he probably was well within his rights to do that. So I didn't play in college other than intramurals and lots of hoop it up in my 20s and early 30s. But the game is in my blood. I eat, sleep,
Absolutely.
drink it. And talking to you, Blake, on a regular basis about the game and the little clips that you send me when the Cedar Park Timberwolves are carving up the opponent, that kind of stuff just keeps me going. And I'm hoping that we can do this for the next 40 years.
Well, I appreciate that. A good friend of mine that I used to coach with, Greg Giddings at Midwestern State, he always said, well, he claims that I came up with this, but I think it was him that came up with this. He always says basketball attracts the best people. It brings the best people together. And that's true. You and I have this passion for the game, and that's why we get along so well and our time together at UT. And then as you get older, as I get older, I still enjoy the coaching and trying to figure out the puzzle of bringing the team together through the individuals. But obviously, I've found other ways to enjoy the game of basketball, visiting these old gyms and researching a little bit of history. Like, who do you know besides me that's going to look at a newspaper from the year 1893 to find some sort of obscure basketball reference? But yet here we are. I was looking at something just yesterday and the day before, and I found a reference in the Galveston newspaper about a game of basketball played in the year 1893. Now, was it an official game of sorts? Well, as official as it could be, 2 years after the game was invented, but it was at a YMCA there in Galveston. And what I'm trying to research now is, where was that building? There's a photo of a building that's been torn down, but it was of a YMCA building that lasted for a long time in Galveston. But I don't think it was built until 1904. But there is a newspaper article from 1893, 2 years after basketball was invented, that was played in Galveston between a group of businessmen and students from Galveston Ball High School. How about that? How about that?
Unbelievable.
And
And
so
so to answer your question, nobody.
nobody,
You're the
nobody,
guy. You're the
nobody.
gem picker. You guys aren't on Twitter. Get on Twitter, X, and follow the gem picker.
Because
Great
I love
content.
it. I mean, you may have some questions you want to ask me, but I love it when people ask me whatever. My mom always
Well,
teases me about, well, what's your favorite gym? And she says, well, every gym is Blake's favorite gym. And she's probably right.
right. And that's not 100% true. Here's what I want to ask you. You grew up in Dimmitt, Texas. Where was it your dad? Was it your mom? Who put a basketball in your hands the first time? How did you fall in love with the game being out in West Texas?
It's exactly why we're sitting here talking about this very subject right now. Is I was very lucky to grow up in Dimmitt. Now, I couldn't tell you who put a ball in my hands, but I can probably tell you why I wanted a ball in my hands, and that was Coach Kenneth Cleveland. You know, Coach Cleveland had come to Dimmitt way back in the 60s before I was born, and he built up an already very good program. Coach Cleveland told me himself, he said, Blaker, when I found out the Dimmitt job was open, I didn't walk, I ran to the nearest phone to call him and tell him I'm ready to come. But you know, my dad was very supportive of anything I did in sports. So was my mom. They both were athletes in their day. Some great stories just from that. Number one, uh, my dad grew up in Dimmitt, and my mom grew up in the Waco area, a little bitty town called Penelope. And at some point in time in history, the Dimmitt girls basketball team played Penelope at the state tournament for girls. That was in 1951. And now my mom and dad are 12 years apart. But the Dimmitt Bobbies, they were the Bobbies, we were the Bobcats, the boys were. The Dimmitt Bobbies were truly they were a celebrity team because they were really good. They had this player on their team named Lomita Odom, who is in the Women's Basketball Hall of Fame. She was a 3-time All-American for Wayland Baptist. They never lost a game with her on the varsity. She played in the Pan American Olympic Games and so on and so forth. Well, my mom played against Lomita Odom in that state tournament. My dad, this is the crazy story. The Dimmitt girls were they had such celebrity status because they were so good. They got down to Waco and word trickled back to Dimmitt.
What, Waco?
Yes, I got to clarify that. The UIL did not sponsor girls basketball, a state tournament, until 1952. Well, this was 1951. There was a league in Waco called the McCamey League. And they went to Baylor to play this state tournament. So this was before the UIL. Even the next year in 1952, when the Dimmitt Bobbies were still very good, they won the state title in 52 as well, but it wasn't a UIL title. It was still this other league. They didn't choose to get into the UIL until the 53 season, I believe it was. And we can get into that later. But anyway, word trickled back. This is a great story to Dimmitt that the Bobbies did not like the way the water tasted in Waco. So my dad, who was a pilot, he and another one of his buddies loaded up several 55-gallon barrels of that great groundwater that comes out of the well in Castro County. And they flew this water to those celebrity Bobby basketball players so they could be spoiled even more when they got there.
So your dad at that time, he's 29, 30 years old. Mom's 17, 18 years old.
Yeah. And they didn't know each other then. They met later through other circumstances. But he was actually at that game rooting against my mom because he flew the water down to them.
Interesting.
It's a true story. The Dimmitt girls, back to their celebrity status, not only did they play for those state titles there in the early 50s, but they traveled up to the state of Iowa to play for the mythical national championship. Now, granted, this was 6-on-6, and so they got to go up to Iowa and play as well. Now, my mom, back to your question about how did you get started with this love affair of basketball? Who put this ball in your hands? Well, at the time, I was basically surrounded by history and didn't know it. I knew that I played for one of the state's most iconic and successful coaches, Kenneth Cleveland. My mom competed and played against one of the greatest, if not the greatest, women's basketball player of her time, Lomita Odom. Because I joke with my mom, I'm like, Mom, you're a record-setting basketball player. In the 3-on-3, the 6-on-6 game, my mom was a defensive player. She was a guard. She got matched up with Lomita Odom, and the Dimmick girls tried to set a state record that night. And Lomita scored 78 points on my mom, essentially. Now
Your
that
mom
will
your mom held her to 78.
held her to 78. and so I teased my mom all those years until I finally met Lomita Odom, and I was thinking, okay, I kind of see, Mom, where these 78 points came from. But of course, again, back to the historical part, that's not a UIL record. You're not going to see Lomita Odom in the UIL record books because she didn't officially play in those UIL contests. They played in the McCamey League. Okay. So, my mom's historical background in the game. And then I played, excuse me, I was a graduate assistant with Coach Stockton at Midwestern State University, Gerald Stockton, who played for, in my estimation, one of the Mount Rushmores in the game of basketball itself was Henry Iba, Mr. Iba, as they called him, one of the most, he's credited with so many defensive concepts that are still used today. Played for Mr. Iba. I got to meet him one time in one of our road trips up to Stillwater. So, I'm surrounded by basketball history, playing in the state tournament, watching the Snook Blue Jays and all those iconic teams at the state tournament. So it came naturally to me. It came naturally to me.
How many state tournaments have you been to, Blake?
I have missed a few, I'll admit that. But for a while there, I couldn't miss it. My first one was in 1978. I'm one of many people now that feel like the the version of the state tournament that we have going on right now in San Antonio leaves a lot to be desired. Those teams and coaches that make it, they deserve our utmost attention. I don't always get down there because it's not always convenient for me right now. But
So you're not a fan of the 8:30 a.m. game?
yeah, haven't been to one of those in a while. I'm sorry. Well, I did see Jeff Bell's early game recently, but
Where did Jeff Bell play high school basketball?
he's a Dimmitt Bobcat, buddy. One of the best ever.
Have you
Played
met a more?
alongside the great Rocky Rawls.
You mentioned Rocky Rawls all the time, and of course, we both know and love Jeff Bell. Is there a more intense individual that is yet one of the most kind people you'll ever meet? He's the perfect balance of intensity and kindness.
No doubt. I have these vivid memories of me sitting in the stands, watching the Bobcats. They would come out of the locker room and they would circle the court. And one of the first things they would do is split up and do, believe it or not, partner passing. Yes. Fake it, fake high, pass low. And Jeff is probably paired with Rocky, and you can see the intensity in something as boring as partner passing. And
Well,
then
you
they
know
would
that I
go,
referee now, and his kids still do that.
oh yeah, I don't doubt it.
In 2024, they are still doing partner passing pregame, and it's a thing of beauty.
Love it. Love it.
So, all right, you got this Encyclopedia Britannica going, and you're like this beautiful basketball mind. Do you have one moment? Do you have a singular moment in the great game of basketball that you're most fond of?
Well, that's a great question. It feeds into a lot of the discussion that we're having these days with split division and too many teams in the playoffs and so on and so forth. And to answer your question, yes, I do. I have a singular moment involving the Dimmitt Bobcats. Um, when I was a sophomore in high school, I was on the JV. I got moved up for the playoffs for the varsity.
Same deal right here.
And this was 1983. Dimmitt Bobcats were on the heels of two consecutive Class 3A state titles.
Hmm.
We had a 68 game winning streak that was broken. It got to 68. And so that was the year after 1983. Uh, we lost, kind of early in the season, but we had a great season, made it all the way to the state tournament. Lost by 1 point to the eventual state champion. But that was the first year, 1983, that the UIL, or excuse me, 1984, sorry, 1984, that's the year. The UIL moved to two teams qualifying for the state playoffs. So we were in a district with our big rival at the time, Abernathy Antelopes,
Mm-hmm.
and they were really good. And it was like oil and water because we had Coach Cleveland and his son Kevin, who had battled against Coach Earlbeck and one of his older sons, Cletus Earlbeck.
At Abernathy.
Yes, at Abernathy. So the Earlbecks and the Clevelands, I think they got along really well off the floor, but on the court, it was some intense stuff.
But I
Now,
know Earl Beck from Plainview, am I right?
yes, he coached Plainview to a state title. He sure did. They had some amazing teams.
That was my first year in coaching that they won the state title. And we played them in the semifinals and they beat us.
Yep,
That year, it was supposed to be Dallas Lincoln versus Port Arthur Lincoln,
yep,
but it ended up being Plainview versus Austin Anderson
yep.
for the championship. And I remember Earl Beck looked like a Marine,
He did.
buzz cut.
Yep.
Yeah. And team was just tough as nails, West Texas tough.
Well, for 2 years in a row, Plainview had this amazing lineup. I mean, Kojak Ridley, Stephen Ridley, D.B. Ray, Marcus Williams, a cast of great role players, Torrey Bryant, um, just amazing team. But Dimmitt, Abernathy in the same district, 1984, all the intrigue from the Clevelands and the Earlbecks was still there. And now we're in the same district. And so during the regular season in district play, Abernathy beat us both times virtually on the last possession of the game, basically on a tip in. They beat us. So the way the bracket is formed now that two teams, we were the district runner up, the way the bracket is formed, we get into the playoffs and we won't see Abernathy again until the regional finals. So sure enough, we're the best two teams in the region. And now we're in the Lubbock Municipal Coliseum. No longer exists. Okay. But we're at the regional championship game playing against Abernathy. And it's It's nip and tuck. It's back and forth. It wasn't a sellout. That place seats about 8,000 people. I think it was close to full. I mean, it was 7,000 people to watch 3A teams play, great crowd. And game comes down to the end. My great friend, Dwight McDonald, who's an attorney, he's a professor at Texas Tech, just a great member of the Lubbock community. Dwight McDonald, we inbound the ball, 3/4 court on the side. He makes a curl cut towards the ball, catches it. He dribbles 3/4 the length of the floor. He crosses over at the free throw line, pulls up, straight down. Shot goes in at the buzzer, and the biggest celebration ensues that you can imagine. I mean, there's a big dog pile at midcourt, and Abernathy, who they probably think they have the better team, they're ranked really high all year. And again, we just came off a state tournament win. The whole team, except Dwight and one other player, essentially had graduated. We weren't supposed to be there at all. And for Dimmitt, we had double-figure losses. And we made that shot at the buzzer, and it was just the greatest feeling in the world. I mean, we yelled and screamed in the locker room after that game. As when I got on the bus, I had no voice. None of us could talk because we had just celebrated until the wee hours of the night.
Were you all taking videos with your cell phone and posting it on social media?
That would be the greatest selling video on YouTube of all time. Now I do have a clip of that shot. There's a clip of the shot. And it was just amazing. It was amazing, and that obviously sent us back to the state tournament where we felt like we belong. Speaking of legendary coaches, Coach Cleveland was the head coach in Dimmitt for 32 years, 27 district championships.
27 of 32.
27 out of 32. And I would have to go back and look at it, but I know in 1977, they lost 2 games to the Morton Indians in our district. They were state champions. One year, Freona in the mid-70s had a terrific team. They went to the state tournament. Dimmitt was not the district champ, but our district, there for a 3 or 4 year stretch, the district that Dimmitt was in either won or represented in the state tournament right there in the mid-70s.
There was some basketball being played out there on the plains.
So that
Castro County.
Yeah. And so that was that's one of my most memorable as a player for Dimmitt. There's been others, of course.
But you probably remember the last conversation you had with Coach Cleveland. But if you could sit down with him today, if there was something you didn't talk to him about, something you didn't share with him, if you could sit down with Coach Cleveland today, what would you tell him?
Well, hopefully I would tell him just how much, and I think he probably understood this, even though he was real humble and unassuming, but just how many people admired him, how many people tried to learn from him. And just to make sure that he understood how influential he was with me and really everybody else. I mean, Jeff Bell, one of the greatest coaches in the state that we've ever had. I guarantee you there's not a day goes by that he doesn't think about Coach Cleveland, And of course, people my age know him. The younger generation probably do not as much. And that's why Backroads basketball exists, to keep these names alive, to keep these moments in time alive. You know, there was probably a lot of people that railed on, oh, we can't have two teams from each district making the playoffs. This won't work. And yet, look at the magic it created in Lubbock Municipal Coliseum late or early March of 1984 with Dwight McDonald hitting that shot. I just wonder how many other stories like that. And that was the very first year, you know. Um, so it would be terrific to be able to sit down with Coach and let him know how much we love and admire him.
Well, I can't imagine. I'd like to be a fly on the wall for that conversation. Blake, people need, if you care about Texas high school basketball, then you need to get immersed in what Backroads is doing. You need to follow Blake on Twitter. You need to watch his YouTube channel. Um, this is just the tip of the iceberg. We're just getting started. So
Just
uh,
getting started.
just getting started, and we're babies. We're young bucks. We're in our mid-50s.
Well, and I say this about Backroads basketball. I've told this story before, but speaking of Dimmitt, um, one of the more painful memories that we have is 1981, I believe it was. We lost a playoff game to the darn Perryton Rangers. There's a lot of teams kind of on my naughty list. Perryton's one of them. They're not near as bad as, say, Seminole or White House,
Mm.
but they're up there. Uh, but anyway, we played Perryton in Pampa,
The
and I
Harvesters.
was at that game. We had a big lead and we lost it, and you know, tears were shed. But the Pampa gym is iconic. Those of you that have been in that gym, it is phenomenal. And really, just the image of that gym stood, you know, remained in my mind for so long. And I always go back to that image. And that's really where this whole thing started, is in the Pampa gym, kind of me taking my mind back to that image of what that gym looked like. I mean, it's a real masculine gym with red brick and wooden bleachers, and just it's very much like it was when it was built in the late 40s, early 50s. And then so on and so forth. You learn about other places and you see other places. You know, I went to Gallagher Iba Arena as a really young coach, and that place is like a museum, and it's changed now. They made it bigger. And then one thing led to the next, and I was like, man, I got to go check these places out. And it's so fun to just kind of weave all this history together. There's so much it's hard to keep up with, but I learn a little bit every day just to see, oh yeah, this guy coached here and he coached this player, and it just all comes together. And just like I said at the beginning, imagine the sport of basketball without the state of Texas. That would be a huge void. Huge void.
Agreed. Let's leave everybody with this. I know you have a favorite gym. You told me about your fondest moment. What's your favorite gym in the great state of Texas?
Ooh, man, you're putting me on the spot. Um, because so many of these gyms, if I had nothing else to do and time was of no concern or other obligations, I've got a lot of important people in my life that that I want to be with. But you know, there's so many of these places that I would just love to just be transported on a daily basis to go just hang out in, shoot, you know, and just soak in the natural light and just the vibe of
The smell.
the smell, the seats, you know, that's a very difficult question to answer. There's a gym way over in deep East Texas in Broadus, the great Baylor Bear, Terry Teagle, and Detroit Piston and Laker. That gym is phenomenal because it, number one, on the outside, it doesn't look like a gym. It's wooden and it's not very tall. And then you walk in and it's like this cave and there's horseshoe seating. So that one ranks right up there. Of course, Pampa, Groover, Claude, Texas, right there on Highway 287, just east of Amarillo. They have a phenomenal gym. Maybe my favorite gym probably is just Gregory Gym for sure, what it represents to the state of Texas and the size and the scope of that gym when it was built and all the different things that have gone on in that gym, you know, from the basketball to the political to the entertainment. You got a lot of buckets there as an intramural player. Yes, you did, Steve Smith.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to say Gregory Gym, but there's others nipping at its heels.
Yeah. Well, and there's a lot of gyms yet to be seen and to be chronicled by you. You got another one?
No, what I was going to say is, yes, there's a lot of gyms to be seen. I've got a few on my list with a little short-term goal of going to see them within the next month or so. And then those of you that are watching at home, if you don't think I've been to your gym or if you think I need to come and check it out, bring it on.
He'll be there. There's no doubt.
I'll come.
And Oklahoma, New Mexico, Arkansas, and Louisiana. It's coming.
The
Well,
gym picker on the way.
absolutely. Listen, this has been a blast, Blake. I can't wait to do it again. I hope this is a regular thing, and we'll bring on guests. And as a proud sponsor of Backroads Basketball, Clear Fork will do whatever we can do to help. Looking forward to next summer, but we got a lot of work to do between now and then.
Yes, we do, because there is a unlimited supply of topics. I've already got, like you said, special guests in mind and then some great topics that we're going to explore. So this has been good. We appreciate everybody tuning in. As everyone likes to remind us, please like and subscribe, and we're going to send this thing onward and upward.
Sounds good. See you soon.
Thank you.